Hello.
Sybil!
Hello, beautiful. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing so good. Girl, I have been looking forward to talking to you for I don't know how long.
And I'm so sorry it took this long, Jasmine. It's
I tried
crazy.
to get you last year, but they said she busy. Sybil
No,
is
no, no, no.
busy. That's
No,
a good
no.
thing though, yeah?
Never that busy for you.
How you been, Miss Sybil?
I'm hanging in. I'm hanging in. How
Hanging
about
in
you?
there.
How those hips working?
Let me tell you something. These hips ain't what they used to be. They still work, but they not what they used to be.
Okay.
Tell that to whomever you feel necessary.
Okay.
So, as you
That's
know,
hilarious.
this woman to woman series is so important to me.
Mm-hmm.
I love it because, I feel as though we spend so much time um, being thankful for the past and those who came before us when a lot of times giants are walking amongst us.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think that we ought to show them that all the time. And so you were one of my giants. I said, I must talk to Sybil. I must talk to Sybil. So many things, so many things. And of course, most of all, this is like a girl chat. It's like me and you at
Mhm.
brunch hanging out. Girl, what's been going on?
Right.
What you been up to? What they saying now, all the things.
Right.
And really also to kind of give you flowers.
Oh, that's very nice.
We
Thank
were on a call together yesterday, and a lot of people were singing your praise. And I said, I'm going to hold mine. I'm going to
you.
hold mine so I can have her all to myself and let her know.
That's funny.
And it's interesting. You probably don't remember me, but eons ago, I
Mhm.
worked at a radio station in Nashville. And I did mornings there, but I was
Mhm.
also, as often as we are in this business, I was also the director of marketing and promotions. And what
Right.
I was responsible for was bringing in the Sky Show. Now,
Mhm.
back then, I worked with David Starr, and I used
Yeah.
to always say, can Sybil come say hi to me?
Yeah.
Because you're an icon. How do you feel when people
Uh,
say that?
I still laugh at that, Jasmine. I really do
Really?
because yeah, I do. I am and I'm not being falsely modest or anything. It's really just one of those situations where to say that I'm an icon, iconic in any way just doesn't it doesn't ring for me. I just do what, as my mother used to say, where else could you get paid for doing what you used to get in trouble for? And so with that in mind and having that kind of responsibility as well as that kind of grounding in my life, I don't see it as icon. I see it as just having done a good job maybe.
But I think that's such an understatement because I think, and I can say that because I'm on the outside looking in and I
Mhm.
understand, your humbleness. I understand all of that. But because I know what I know, what I know, and I know about this industry. And I
Yeah.
know for women, why is it so? I mean, obviously, anybody in any industry could say it, but why is it specifically in entertainment and more specifically in radio? We
Yeah.
never we never get the lead seat. We rarely get the big chair. Shout out to Dee Dee who got the big chair,
Right.
but
Right.
you should have had the big chair, Sybil. You should have had a big chair.
Well, when I got in the big chair when Tom was out, it was just, oh, she's filling in for that. And they would always have complaints or they would have, other directions that they wanted to go in. And in this male dominated business, it is very curious that we don't get the big chair. And God knows women like you and others that are now in the position to get the big chair. I am there cheering on the sidelines because it's past time. It's way past time. And that's why we're so excited about Dee Dee McGuire because like you said,
Yes,
she got it.
she
She
got it.
got it. And she represents all of us who and she was in the side chair for many years.
Yes, she was.
And so, she made that leap and God love her. But
But it's so sad that it's 2025. I believe in being real and
yeah.
being honest. And anybody who knows me knows I tell it like it is. Honey, I am a girl from Tennessee, and baby, we tell it like it TI is. I
Come
think
on.
it's so sad that in 2025, you can count on your hand the number of women, and really, you still have some fingers left over, correct me if I'm
Mhm.
wrong,
Mhm.
of women who've sat in the big chair. And
Yeah.
it is, I don't know for you, but you can tell me how you feel. Sometimes it's crushing because you feel like no matter how good you think you are, or no matter how good you see someone else, maybe you ain't gonna never get the big chair.
Right, right, and or the big piece of chicken or whatever it is, we're not going to get it, and I think I kind of just eased into that way of thinking, Jasmine, and just not let it deter me from keep going every day,
Yeah.
because I don't know. I think that maybe you have to own the radio station in order to like Ms. Kathy Hughes,
Kathy Hughes.
in order to have the mic and to have your own show. But I think that there are now opportunities out there for women to kind of move into that particular spot. It's a little bit easier because of all the other opportunities in media, whether it's a podcast or whatever it is, to kind of show yourself. And well, I didn't have that. I had the Tom Joyner Morning Show, which was a big
Huge,
platform, a
huge.
big
And
platform.
speaking of
Yeah.
that, I have to ask because we soul sisters and it is what it is. Did it feel like a dagger? There, I said it. When Tom decided to retire, I mean, did it feel like a dagger? I'm just gonna say it. Did
No,
it?
no, no, because here's the thing. We get into this business and we're gypsies to a certain extent. I think with you and we're maybe the exception because the longevity has been
Mhm.
there. But we did this show for so long, and so and Tom, had his physical not travesties, but physical travails, and so it was time. It was
Yeah.
time. We could kind of see the writing on the wall, as things were being pulled back, and we weren't going and traveling and doing as much. So we knew that our time was getting short. And Tom, said, it's time that we start thinking about other things. I
Yeah.
think for him, it might have been more difficult, but not for me, because we were hired to be fired. When you go into
Oh my
radio, it's
God.
like,
The wait, now that was a dagger. Because let me tell you something. Those are some real words. And I don't think people understand what it's like for gypsies. I've
yeah,
never even thought about that, but that is so true.
yeah,
We are wanderers. Like
yeah,
we float, you've been in this game as long as I have. We
mm,
float from city to city, small, medium, and large.
yeah,
And, you know, it's really hard because I know the value that you have and
mhm,
the value that you added to a show
mhm,
that sometimes other people don't always recognize
right,
in the
right,
form of words or dollars.
right. And that's true. That is so true. I remember once having a discussion with a person on the show who was paid way more than I was, and I thought that my value was not being, wasn't worthy of those dollars. And so, and when you act, and so you kind of have to find your path and find other ways of doing it. Because if I wanted to stay on the show, I didn't want to give a, either I get paid more or I go. That's just not my nature. But I did want to understand what the power structure was, what the rankings were, and I just wasn't in the top two.
Mm.
And so, and even when things changed with Anthony Brown leaving and things like that, it was still looking for those people who could bring the comedy to the show, and that wasn't my job, and I understood that. But still, the amount of money that they got paid for a day's work is just it's pretty unbelievable. But it
Yeah,
is,
also is the frustration sometimes that comes with it
yeah,
because,
yeah,
I'm sure, you and I are we're kind of cut from the same cloth. I could be a little more crazy and reckless with the mouth than you, but I think we both, we have that journalistic instinct and we understand that, it's more than the topic at hand. It is not just rip and read. Like we have to get into
right,
the details and those things are
right,
important.
right.
And the difficulties of checking somebody where they're wrong, but tell me about your feelings and your definition of co-host compared to, because a lot of people always say, why does she always just sit there? I'm like, because I understand my role.
Exactly.
How come she don't never say that? Because I understand my role. It is a
Right.
very difficult seat. But
Right.
how did you handle it?
Well, you know what? We came in on the show when the Tom Joyner Morning Show started. It was Tom and me and Kevin Woodson, and Kevin and I were the sidekicks.
Oh, I
We
hate that
were,
word.
yeah,
I
yeah.
hate that word.
And I'm not sure how it came to be that the titles changed, but certainly it did. And then and Tom never disagreed with, here are my co-hosts, because it used to be here are my sidekicks, and so it was a journey to get to that title. But once I got there and understood that, I felt very protective of Tom in a lot of instances. And so I didn't want to, and I knew that there were may have been some deficiencies in his understanding the intricacies of a story or a particular topic. And so it was my job to kind of just to ease him into it and to ease the information to him and spoon feed him, in effect, before we go on or even during the interview, to try to make him look good.
Hmm.
And that's not a bad thing, Jasmine, because my job is not to make a fool of Tom Joyner. That was not my job. My job was to inform, as we do now, to inform, empower, and entertain people. But it what and to make him the jester and to make him to be a fool, that's not doing anybody any good. And certainly not our listeners and not to Tom. So
Yeah.
I kind of understood that. And having worked, because when I said about we're hired to be fired, having worked with just a number of people, the last person I worked with was Doug Banks,
Hmm.
before I moved to Dallas to work with Tom. And then I worked with other people in my travels in Florida and what have you. But they were different. The ego was there. The smaller the market, the bigger the egos in
Every
a lot
time.
of respects. And so it was interesting. And when Tom, hired us and had ABC hire us, it was never spoken that you can't make me look bad. It was just on my part. It was just something on me. We would have fun with them and we would tease them and stuff, but I always had a line. I always had a line, between, because I wanted to maintain the fact that it was the Tom Joyner Morning Show,
Yeah.
and it was not the Sybil Wilkes Show. And if it was, then I could pretty much have at it. But it was his show, and I was there to help him with it and to
Yeah, it's
be a.
always such a hard thing to
It's,
explain
it's, it's
to
a
other
real
people.
fine
Oh,
line.
it's
Oh
a
my God!
fine line. And it takes someone with special talent and the ability to pivot at a moment's notice to be able
Yeah,
to do it. And not everyone is good at it. Because,
right,
I always like to say, sometimes I have to die to myself daily, understanding, like you just said, it ain't my show. You know what
right,
I mean? And so I'm
right,
there to make sure that he doesn't fall on his face, to make
right.
sure that, and sometimes I have to explain him, but I understand I consider myself much, I'm sure like you did, as his work wife. And there are
Right.
certain things that I understand, okay, well, we can't do this because y'all don't
Mhm.
understand it, but I do.
Mhm.
So do you have any regrets in your career? Like, do you wish that you had have taken a left turn here or a right turn there? Is there anything that you wish you'd have done differently?
I had an opportunity at one point during the show. There was talk about me having a weekend show, and to have an interview show with the shakers and the movers in politics. And I pursued that, and then it just kind of fell by the wayside because we lost our executive producer for the show, and he went and did another job. And when the next person came in, there was no action. There was no, and we didn't have enough traction with that idea to keep it moving. So that was
Mm.
probably my biggest regret. And now I'm able to do it, but it's so exhausting. It's exhausting
But we
because,
need it, Sybil. It's so needed.
and I get that, but it also takes a lot of help that we don't necessarily have. And so I had to pull back on some things, and I'll get back to it, I think, if the timing is not too bad. But that was probably my biggest regret, was not pursuing that, because that would have been the lift or
Yeah.
the springboard into something else.
With so much pressure, not only from what you do, But just personally in life, like the pressures of, being or I don't do this, but the pressures that people put on you to be a certain thing or to do a certain thing. What actually makes Sybil happy? Like brings you pure joy that you laugh from your gut all the way, like loud, reckless abandon, just like, oh my God, this brings me so much joy. What brings Sybil joy?
Right now, it's Hallmark movies. Um,
Me too. I don't know if that's an age thing for me because I'm like, I could watch them all day.
yeah,
Christmas
yeah.
in the spring, I don't care.
Come on. And people don't understand that. But after a day of all of the madness and coming across stories and deciding what stories we're going to put into the newsletter and all that kind of stuff, that is just a total. And I feel like my mother has been deceased for over 30 years, but I feel like I understand her now because she was a really smart woman, and she used to read all these books, and at one point I was like, and then she started reading romance novels, and I was like, who are you? What? And she said, you will understand one day that the heaviness of the world will come on your shoulders, and you need a way to release all of this, and this is my time out, this is my release. And I
Wow.
understand that now with Hallmark movies.
Yeah.
I used to and this was funny during the show. I told the story that how we were talking about waking up in the morning and how we were awakened, and I told the story that my mom used to sing "You Are My Sunshine" every morning to me.
Oh.
And so they said, you didn't have a black mama. No black mama sings "You Are My Sunshine." And my mother said, the world is going to be tough enough when you step out this door. And she said, I want right now to be your place of peace. And whatever you need to do, I'm going to help you find that peace. And that is by starting your day off with a song that empowers you.
Oh.
And so that's where I am now with Hallmark movies or Great American Family or those on, not the Lifetime, she's,
Right. Setting the
three
bed on
times.
fire.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not
No,
that one.
no, not those. But like you said, the Christmas in
Mhm.
April, May, are you kidding me? That
Bring them on.
girl, come
Bring them
on.
on. I watch them, and I am not ashamed about it. If you come into my home, you'll see that that's what I'm watching. Either you get with it or get out.
Exactly.
What do
Exactly.
you miss? What do you miss the most about your mom?
That is a great question because she's really been on my mind a lot lately. I miss her words of wisdom like that, and she used to have what I called motherisms, and so I miss her just kind of spouting them off. And she one that I mention a lot is that's why God made erasers. Don't be afraid to go out there and do something, and if you make a mistake, just erase it. That's why God made erasers. Now, and I also add, the mother was also married 4 times. So she erased,
Baby,
erased,
Sybil, your
erased.
mama was out there. She was out there with a big ass eraser. She's like, I don't even remember him. Mm-mm."
That's right. And when she died, and speaking at her funeral, there was one man that she was married to that nobody ever knew because that's how short the marriage was. But she was like, she was fun, and she was my biggest supporter. And that's what I
Mm.
miss, is having that. And I have that now. My best friend, I really believe that my mother put me and my best friend Yolanda Starks White together, because she knew that I needed, that
Yeah.
kind of companionship and that kind of support, and Yolanda has done that.
I love that. I love the one thing that I love about you and Yolanda is the sisterhood.
Mm.
And what I think it does is really trumps the old narrative that black women don't get along and that we're catty and we can't have best
Oh,
friends. And doesn't that just irritate you when you hear that?
it breaks my heart. It breaks my
Because
heart
it's not
because
true, right?
it's so not true. And that's what we're trying to do, with Sisters on the Mic. That's the program that we're starting, or have been trying to work on for years. But nobody wants to hear the positive, where, hey sis, that kind of thing. And so we are efforting. And I grew up as an only child, so I didn't have sisters. But my mom used to say, to have good friends, you have to be a good friend. And so I recognize that. And in this business, telling young Black women especially, I see you, and you're going to be okay. that's really important to me. And so that is the kind of thing that it just kind of picking up the phone and saying, I was thinking about you, how you doing? And I have text chains and things like that. But it is really remarkable to know that, like this morning, I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I called Yolanda because I knew she would be awake, because that's when her muse works, as she says. But it's really great knowing that, that you have that kind of friendship and sisterhood that she and I have, and that I want to extend to others.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's really the backbone of woman to woman for me because
Oh,
I felt like, we don't have enough of these everyday kind of, I'm not trying to get to the heart of nothing. I'm not trying to solve problems. I just want to talk to my girl. I want to make sure
right,
she's good. I want to see if she
right,
needs anything. And I think
right.
especially in our industry, but certainly in every industry, because, I've often described our jobs, especially if you're solo, right? If you
Hmm.
work by yourself, it's a very
Yeah,
lonely job
it
because you
can be.
sit in a box, right? You
Yep.
sit in a studio, a very small box by yourself for 4 hours and you're talking to no one. You don't know who's listening. It's
Uh,
li- it's a lonely place and you can feel like you're by yourself. And because the jobs are so few and far between for women, you're afraid to make friends. I know I
yeah.
was early
Hmm.
on,
Hmm.
and then as you get older, you begin to realize the importance of sisterhood. At what point in your career, or just in your life, did you realize how important it is to not just to develop it, but also to really cultivate and nurture it? At what point was there something that happened, or did you just say, you know what? I don't care if no one's reaching out to me. I'm going to reach out to them and be a better friend. What happened? Was it just a natural transition, or was there something that happened?
No, I will tell you, and referencing my mother again, she had breast cancer and she was having a surgery.
Mhm.
And the surgery was scheduled for a Friday. And just as we were leaving the house, it was it was the surgeon saying that he had been in surgery all night and he was not going to be able to do it. He did not want to do that and perform surgery on my mother. And so um, the group that assembled at our house to go to the hospital, we all went out to breakfast together, and these were all my mother's girlfriends. And that's when I knew. And then the following week, when she had the surgery, and you're in the waiting room, and they call your name, they call the patient's name, and all of these women stood up with me, and I was like,
Wow.
this is what it's about.
Mm.
This is it. And so I knew then what she was talking about. I saw it in action. And and when she passed years later, they were all there for me. And it was just an amazing example of how important this sisterhood is, however large or however small it is. If it's you and another person, if it's you and 12 other people. I used to
Mhm.
laugh that when I moved back to Chicago and I was doing an overnight talk show, and I had 13 people listening to the show between midnight and 5 a.m. It was my mother and 12 of her friends. And I just knew, but I knew that, she said, we
My
got to,
baby's on the radio. Y'all better be
you
listening.
better listen. Exactly. And that was, and those are the times, and I understood the power of friendship and sisterhood. And it was just, and I carried that with me. All through, men come and go, and some do understand your relationship with the women, and
Child.
some don't, but they're going to be there for you.
Yeah, always.
They're going to be
Always,
there
without
for you.
question. I think
Yeah.
I think there is nothing more beautiful. And I mean, obviously, all sisterhoods to me
Mm,
are beautiful. But I think that there is something magical
mm.
about the sisterhood of Black and brown people.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we will love on you. We will check you with
Hmm.
an attitude and then bake you some cookies. We will go fight that man for you. We will
Uh-huh.
do all the things. We fall out, we get back together. The fallout is
Yep.
short lived. But even in
Yep.
that process, if you call us, we're there. And I think
Yep.
that during this past election, we saw that how we
Mm.
came together and then how we continued to
Oh my God.
galvanize with Black
Yeah.
women pray and Black women gather and Black women brunch. And I mean, if you want it done, baby, call a Black woman. And
Come
baby,
on. Make it
baby,
happen.
let me tell you something. I always love the story. You remember the black girl in the Carolinas who went up that flagpole. Do you remember?
Yes, yes.
I said, yeah, you know that was a
Come
sister.
on, come
I
on.
love that. What
Immediately.
just immediately, what do you think for you is the most magical thing about women of color?
Their dogged persistence. You
Dogged
know,
persistence.
you think about and still I rise.
Oh,
That's where we are. You know, we're going to be beat down. We're going to lose elections. We're going to, whatever it is, we're going to have, our heat cut off. We're going to have, but that's okay because the day is going to come. We're going to keep moving, and if we have to have someone help, we have to go and lift her up. She's going to rise, and
yeah, every
still we
time.
will rise.
Now,
Yeah.
the only drawback for me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. I felt this way about both my biological mother and my adopted mother, and that is we're always rising. We're always rising, but we
Yeah.
never reach the top.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
always rising. And so I always feel as if, we are almost like the forgotten ones because
Yeah.
we live to pour into other people and we
Mm.
never get to experience the fullness of our own joy. Do
Right.
you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Does that
Absolutely.
ever do you ever feel that way?
I thought about that recently. I was talking to a friend, Alexis Herman, the Secretary of Labor that just passed,
Mm,
and I thought about how she worked all of these campaigns from when she was a little girl growing up in Alabama, in Jim Crow Alabama, and working her way into the Carter administration, and finally rising to the level of Secretary of Labor in the second Clinton administration, not the first, but the second, and becoming the first Black female U.S. Secretary of Labor. And so I thought, and that's and she went on to work all the campaigns after that, the Democratic campaigns, whether it was Al Gore or Obama but and she got her flowers, and maybe Jasmine, that's as far as she wanted to go, but you just want to see her be that Kamala Harris of that time period, maybe,
yeah.
or to be the first Black woman in 1968 to run for president, but you just wanted her to be that one, and
Mm,
so it is kind of frustrating, and I want to be alive when that does happen. And I thought this was it, this last time. And I don't want to put things always in political terms, but this really took me out.
yeah.
This
I think
really
it took
took
a
me
lot of
out.
us out.
Yeah, yeah. And
I
I knew
mean,
I
we
wasn't
worked.
alone. Yeah,
Yeah, like we worked and worked and worked and, in the face of, people just, oh my gosh, just spitting on Kamala's name and
yeah,
saying all of these
yeah,
horrible things that we as women have to deal with all the time about we're
yeah,
not smart and we
yeah,
slept our way to the top and we this and
yeah.
we that. It couldn't be our own merit. It couldn't be possibly be the fact that we're the most intelligent person in the room, right?
Right, right.
And I felt so gutted. Like, I
Yeah,
I know for about 2 weeks, I was like, "I don't give a shit what happened. I don't care. I hope the whole world fall off the axis." Like, I didn't care because I felt like we had worked so hard with dogged determination, as you said, and still, again, rising, rising, but never getting to
yeah.
the top.
The top.
But like
And
you, I'm optimistic. I'm
yeah,
optimistic. I'm
yeah.
optimistic.
I don't
Are
know
you
who she
optimistic?
is or where she is, but she's out there.
Oh, yeah, without question, without
Yeah,
question. Are you
yeah.
optimistic about love? I saw your cup, live, love, laugh. Which order? In which order? Do we laugh first and live and then love, or do we
No,
love first and like, in what
it,
order?
it is in this order.
Oh, in that order.
It is in this order because to love, you have to really live with a great deal of passion, and so I'm not so sure. And I'm not saying that my time has come and gone, and I've had a lot of good in betweens,
How
and really,
good was the in between?
you know,
How
you
good
know,
was it, simple girl? How good was it?
it was pretty damn good. And so, you don't, I don't know if he's out there, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful,
Yeah.
but I don't go looking for it because I think if you go looking for it, then you might lose sight of something else
Oh,
that
for
comes
sure.
along.
I saw where Tracy Ellis Ross caught a lot of flack
Oh
because of
yeah,
what she said. I was so
yeah.
angered by it that I started to do a post and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to waste my energy. I hate that there is such this stigma. I get it all the time. Like,
Hmm.
what's wrong with you? Are you crazy?
Right,
How come you're not
right, right,
married? Blah, 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 blah.
right.
I'm like, how come you don't mind your business? Like, there's nothing wrong with me. Have you heard that a lot?
Oh my God. And it's no longer, it's at some point it was no longer a whisper. It was like, girl, what's wrong with you? It's like, I'm good. Ain't
That
nothing
part, because
wrong
you
with
got a lot
me.
of good in betweens.
ain't, ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm really good. And if
Yeah.
there's a man out there who thinks that he can handle all this,
You
then
better
bring him
tell him,
on.
Sybil. You heard
Bring him
that, didn't you? Bring them
on.
on. It's so interesting too, though, because I feel the world in many ways wants us to, I don't want to say dumb down, but
Yeah.
you're an accomplished woman, right? You've had some incredible experiences. You're
Right.
very smart. What does it take if a guy is approaching you? And I tell people all the time, I'm never going to, you know, kind of lower my standards because the
Hmm.
pool is dry. If the pool is
Right.
dry, baby, let me get some water and fill it up. But what I'm not
Right.
going to do is drop below, right?
Right.
Is
Right.
I mean, are you in that same vein of thinking?
Have you had this experience that, when you meet people and you really hope that they don't know what you do?
All the
Because
time.
when they know, it used to be, "Oh, I bet you have a great time hanging with the crew." And if they say that, then I'd say, "It's been nice meeting
Yeah.
you." Because that's not who I am.
Yeah.
That hanging with the crew, that's a part of my job.
And you
That
ain't
was
coming
my
around my job.
Okay. And so and for them to understand that, and so that was very important for me to be able to make that distinction when meeting them. And the other thing that really attracts me is laughter. If you can make me laugh, and so that's why this is so important, because that is a
Mhm.
part of it. If you can make me laugh, and that shows a certain amount of intellect, you don't have to show me that you read the New York Times and that you can do the puzzle in ink every day. That's not what's important. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and you don't have to hit me over the head with how much you know. It'll come, and
Yeah.
I'll get it. I'm smart enough to get it. But I don't want anybody who has to work that hard and prove that he's as smart or smarter than I am.
Where are we going wrong with relationships? I feel as though when I
Oh,
was growing up and, even in college, I felt
yeah.
I was far more optimistic than I am now because it
Mhm.
seemed to me that we didn't really understand each other, but we were
Mhm.
trying to understand each other.
Right.
Whereas
Right.
now, I don't think we even want to understand each other because every time I hop on social media, men are telling women how they think and how they are, and then women are pointing the finger back, and it's almost like we enjoy the bickering more than we enjoy, maybe coming together. Do you feel that
Yeah.
way?
Absolutely. And it takes an elder, to say, forget the finger pointing, forget all of that. Just talk.
Yeah.
Just converse. Just have a conversation about anything, and whether it's about sports, whether it's about politics, whether it's about your love of Hallmark movies and why you love them, and just to try to understand each other without, without the loud talking, without calling someone out of their name. We don't take the time because we're so fast and we just want to get to it and then get it done.
Mhm, and
As it
just like
were.
that, and
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
that.
exactly. And that's a difficult thing to accept too. So it's just that we don't take the time to, and I don't want to sound, like I'm, Little House on the Prairie, but there's no courting anymore.
There's
There's
not.
no, there's no, there's always the pursuit, and I like the chase. Don't get me wrong, I like that, little back and forth, but there's no real, I like you, you like me. Let's just spend some time together,
It's so
and
interesting
go
when we
from
were
there.
younger, you didn't realize the value of that little "I like you, do you like me?" And
Right, and
understanding
check
that that was
one.
That was the courtship. That was the
Yeah,
beginning of the very innocent
yeah,
courtship. And I
yeah.
think, unfortunately, I tell people all the time, you can tell a lot about relationships through songs.
Oh,
Because back in the day,
oh,
you didn't have to look a certain way. You didn't have
mhm,
to be a certain age. All you needed to know was how to sing and have a good hook, and it was a
okay,
love song. Because think about it,
okay.
the OJs when they weren't kids, they were old when I was young, and they old now.
Right, right,
But baby,
right.
when he said last night, me and my woman
Come
cried
on,
together, baby. And you think about that. You
that's
think
just
about
it.
the Luthers and you think about,
Mhm.
the Phyllis Hyman. They were older and they were
Oh,
singing
yeah,
about love.
yeah,
And I remember listening and thinking, oh, I can't wait to have a man like that. But now the music is indicative of the love, just
yeah.
like that. It's and I don't know what to do with this. So, well, what do you do? Especially as, a woman of a certain age,
Yes.
what do you do?
And so I think that sometimes we just have to extend ourselves a little bit if we get to the point. Because I have a friend who's now she's in her 70s, but she will not sit down, whether she's on the golf course or whether she's traveling or doing things for her business. She's always very open and bubbly. I'm not the open and bubbly type, Jasmine. I'm more, I'll sit back and kind of scope the scene, but I'm not one to say, hey, that's just not who I am. But sometimes, if you find that you're lonely or you just want to get out or whatever, sometimes you just got
You
to
have to
push
do it.
yourself out
You
there.
do.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah,
What's the
yeah.
most uncomfortable thing you've ever done
Oof.
that was completely anti Sybil, like polar opposite? What's the most uncomfortable thing?
God, that's a great question because I've stood on the edge a lot of times, but I don't know how I got there. It
Mm.
was almost a loss of consciousness, whether it's a relationship with someone or a single event with someone. Um, that's a good question. I have to think about that because I found myself at these places at these points and figure out, how did I get here?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I got to think about that one.
Yeah. I like to
What about
believe
you?
I've done a lot of things that were uncomfortable because
Hmm.
I've always been of the thought that unless you are stacking up moments of uncomfortableness, then you're not
Hmm.
really living. So I try to do
Hmm.
something every day, like, obviously talking comes natural to me.
Sure.
But what most people don't know is that I can be a little shy. I can be a little introverted. I'm an introvert
Hmm.
extrovert, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I have gotten up impromptu and did a comedy set.
Right. Right.
And was like,
Right.
I'm not a comedian, but I'm gonna
Right.
make you laugh or I'm gonna run
Okay.
up out of here,
Right.
things
Right.
like that. I've gone to, into dance clubs that no one spoke English and had the best time of my life. And all I
Yeah.
kept saying was, see, see.
Yeah. That fee will get you very far.
It's that kind of thing, Sybil. What
Yeah.
what would you say are the words that you live by?
Well,
Sybil's mantra of life. What is it?
I would say this, and that's why I have this
Live,
drinking
love,
tea
and
right now.
laugh.
Laugh, yeah. I think that that's really important, and if you are not able to do the loving and the laughing part, then as my mom used to say, your living is in vain.
Can you do one without the other? Do you think
I
that's
don't.
possible for a person to live but not love, but to laugh and not live? Like, is it possible, or must I feel like you have to have all three.
Yeah, I do too. And if you think that you are living without those other two, then I don't know that you're living.
Yeah, you're fooling
If you're
yourself.
you're, you're you're existing, and if you want to call that living, that's fine, but it is also important that you kind of, as you say, extend yourself and get out there and try some different things and meet different people, um, and try these things that are just out of your realm of normalcy, if
Yeah,
that makes any sense. Whatever feels like normal, and you just go along your day-to-day life, and if you feel like you're extending yourself, then you're living. You're
yeah,
living. Yeah,
yeah.
you're
I
living.
believe
And
that. I
without
believe that.
abandon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's hard sometimes because you. I think you have these. I believe that sometimes if you're not careful, the magic that you're born with just dissipates every year
Right.
that you get older. It's one of the
Mhm.
reasons why I don't really celebrate birthdays, because I feel like people put these invisible chains on you
Yeah.
based on your age. And I
Yeah.
love the fact that I am still very much a child, sometimes too childlike. But I think that there's magic there. I think
There
there's
is.
magic. And I want to be able to say at the end of it all that there's nothing left but dust. What will you
Come
say?
on.
What
Come
do you want
on.
to say at the end? What do you want to say?
She laughed.
She laughed.
She laughed because that finding humor in some of the most difficult situations shows your humanity and shows
Mm,
that you were able to get in there and to see the good and the bad and come out laughing.
I love that. I absolutely love that. If you were able to have a conversation with God or whatever um, being that you believe in, and they said, I'm going to let you do what your mama said, and I'm going to give you an eraser, and you can
Mm,
erase one thing,
mm.
what would you erase?
I'm not going to say his name, but
Why is it always a dude? It's always a dude we want to get rid of. Sybil, it's a lot of people that be like, I don't know him. I've never seen him in my life. Never dated him.
exactly.
He ain't never seen my smiley face. You know what I mean? He never seen none of that. I don't know him. Don't even know what you're talking about.
Ask for a do over, but I'm not going. I'm not going. Mm-mm, mm-mm.
It's got to be something else.
And I'm not going to give him the satisfaction
Don't
of
do it.
no, no,
And
no.
don't waste it on that. I would do it
Right,
on something else. I would never waste
right,
it on that. Because at the
right.
end of the day, good, bad, or indifferent, I think all of those types of things you learn something from. And
Hmm.
you use it to be better, to do
Right,
better, and to hopefully wish for better, right?
right,
In the
right.
end.
Yeah, absolutely. In the end,
Yeah.
and so I think that Yolanda and I traveled a lot before the pandemic and all of that stuff, and then we kind of got back into it this past year, and we went to London to see The Devil Wears Prada. And
Oh,
so yeah, we went to see, and it was so great, and we were walking back to the hotel, and we both were thinking the same thing, and finally I said, I wish that when we thought about it, when we talked about it years ago when we were in London, that we had taken that opportunity to look for jobs and perhaps live there. So
mm.
that's probably something I'd like to do over, as well as to have the opportunity to do. Because I'm really thinking about leaving this country now during this particular political time. But I really regret that I didn't go over to the BBC and see if I couldn't find a job
Yeah.
and work there and be part of
Well,
that
I
that
mean,
life.
it's never too late. Especially now, it's
Yeah,
never too
okay.
late. It's
Okay.
never too
Yeah.
late. Oh my God.
Yeah.
What a
Yeah.
delight, Sybil. This has been an incredible conversation. You're everything I thought you would be. You say you're not really light and bubbly, but you really are. Maybe
Well, you
not
bring it
all the
out in me.
time. But I have always loved your laugh. I'm huge on laughter, but what most people ignore, I
Mhm.
really kind of hone in on, and that is I love the sound of laughter. And the
Right.
way that someone laughs tells me a lot about them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I can tell that you are like just full of life and full of gusto, and a woman who's learned some things and knows how to love and how to give and take, because
Yeah.
that's how things move.
That's what we have to
And
do.
I love that. And I just hope that I get the opportunity to spend more time with you and maybe be more in that sister circle that you got, because I think that it's important that when we cross paths like that, you know you know how they say you're only as strong as your weakest link. I think
Right.
with the way that we are as women in this industry, which is to me is unlike any other, there are a lot of similarities, but this industry right here, I tell people all the time, make a choice with your eyes wide open.
Ooh,
because it
yeah.
ain't everything that you think it is. And it's a lot more to it than just turning the mic on and yip, yip, yip. It's so
Mhm.
much more to it. You know,
Yep.
it will drag your innards out if you're not
And
careful.
and then you're all hunched over at one point. You go, well, where did all of me
Where did
go?
it go?
It's back
Exactly.
there somewhere. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But I look forward to working with you on this
Thank
upcoming
you.
project. I am excited about it. It is everything that I believe in. And I have no doubt whether it's the BBC or anywhere else, I know
Mm.
you're always going to be somewhere at the top, and that's going to be a thing for me now every time. I just
Jasmine, I
adore
love
you,
you. I
Sybil. I
do too.
do.
And
Thank you
I look
so
forward
much.
to what we're doing as well. I look forward because we're
The
gonna have
same,
some good time.
likewise, ditto for
Yeah.
sure. And again, thank you
Yeah.
so much for taking the time to speak to me. I know you're busy with all of the things that you have going on. I wish you continued success. I wish you more love and joy than your heart can hold. And I know
Oh.
your mom is up there saying, "That's my girl. You better listen to her."
Thank you so much, my friend. This has been a lot of
Thank
fun. I
you.
really
I'm
appreciate
so
you.
glad. Thank you.
You
We'll see you soon.
absolutely.
Bye.
Be well.
You too.